In this video, we're going to be discussing how to hold a video conference or Teams meeting. Now, before I carry on, there's a little caveat in this, in that Teams, because of the whole pandemic situation, Teams has been developed quite rapidly. So some of the things, they may have developed by now, and I'll try and point out the ones that I know are being worked on at the moment, just so you know. Now, before we go into this, Teams, the application, which I have open here, is slightly different in this respect to the web app, which is the one you open through a browser like Chrome, in that if you open it at the moment, as it stands, unless they change this, you can only see one person at a time. But as I believe at this moment in time, if you use a Teams app and you have a video conference, you can see 9 people at the moment, which it was 4 recently. It's being developed now, and it might be more in the future. So you can see up to 9 people, but you have to use the full app. So you need to either download it for Windows, Android, or Apple. So this is a Teams timer. So I clicked in my test year 10 computer science class I used in my basics video. And there's a couple of ways you can do a Teams meeting. First of all, you can actually click the Meet Now option down here. You can give it a subject, so we'll call this one test, and you can click Meet Now and it will instantly start the meeting, or you can schedule it. You can schedule it this way, or if you click on the calendar on the left, if I click this now, you can also click a slot and then click New Meeting at the top right now, and again Meet Now. So what we'll do is we'll go to the schedule just to see the options are. So I'll jump back to Teams. So we'll click on Meet Now, we'll call it test, and we'll click schedule a meeting. Now this brings up this window. Obviously you've got your name here. This is where you can add attendees. And this is the useful bit here. This essentially, by default, has chosen everyone in this channel. But obviously you can invite other people, and it's always best to do the channel rather than the attendees individually, because it's quicker. So if I delete that, and I can select, these are all my teams here. So if I select my test one, there we go, and it'll come up with my general, because remember you can have sub-teams. So I'll choose my general, which is everyone, and it will invite them all. Obviously you can schedule the time, and you can schedule if it's all day, and if you want a repeat event, and you can add details, etc. Now I'm just going to go ahead and hit, we'll jump to schedule in the system. That brings up the calendar. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit send. Now there's a really annoying part. There's actually some options you need to check, and this is really important. However, they're not on this initial screen, which is quite annoying, but it is what it is. So I hit send, and then that will then create a meeting in the other group's timeline. So I'm just going to jump over to my test account, and as you can see here, there's the test one there. So I'm going to click on this now, and if we give it a second, there's an option here to join the meeting. I can see the details of the meeting and so forth. So I'll just close that a second and jump back to my Teams account. Now, as I said earlier, you need to change some options. So once you've scheduled a meeting, if you click back on it, you'll notice there's these meeting options here. So if I click these meeting options, it opens up in a web browser, and you've got these options here. So you've got who can bypass the lobby. That basically means who is allowed to essentially just join the meeting without being, stopped along the way or intercepted. Now, unfortunately, at this moment, I know Microsoft, I believe, are working on this. You can only choose everyone, which means everyone bypasses the lobby. People in my organisation and trusted, which I believe is part of the Llanishen organisation and in your team, and people in my organisation, which means just people in Llanishen.cardiff domain. It means essentially there is no option for nobody, which basically means that you can't say that everyone has to go into the lobby. So that's the only problem at the moment. You've also got, now this is the most important part of the whole thing. You have to go into here for this bit here. At the moment, by default, it starts with everyone. What that means is it's saying everyone has presenter privileges. So that means if you've got presenter privileges, you can remove people and you can mute people and do what you want, which means the kids could essentially kick you out of the meeting. They could mute other kids and mess around. So if you choose only me, it means only you will have those privileges. So make sure you do that before the meeting starts if you're meeting with kids. Hit save. It'll save it. There you go, it's done, and you can go back to Teams. So once we're happy, we've scheduled the meeting, we've changed our options, we can click join. And there we go, it'll give you a little option here. You can mute your mic. I'm going to mute my mic. You can mute your camera and mic. I don't actually have a camera on this computer, but I'm going to mute my mic so it doesn't mess around with my sound for this video. But you can change all your options there, and then when you're ready, there you go, join now. and then it'll connect to the meeting. And obviously it's going to say waiting for others to join. So if I go back to my test account, let's go back to here and let's go into the team timeline, and you'll see what they see. So you can see it says it's started, test started. You can click join and that'll take the kids straight into the meeting. There we go. We'll mute their mic as well. Join now. Okay, so they're connecting, and now they're seeing me. So this is a pupil account seeing me, and if I go back, I see them. They're both called T because they're both test accounts. Anyway, so what I've got now, because this is the test.user, sorry. Now, what we've got now are lots of options, which I'm going to go through now. Firstly, you've got your mute options and disable camera. So those are fairly straightforward. I would recommend you insist all pupils mute their cameras and mute their mics. And if they need to speak, they can unmute them. But again, I guess that depends on your relationship with the class. This one's very important. This is basically the share. This allows you to share your screen or a resource. If I click share, on the bottom here, all the things I have open. So I've got a PowerPoint open there. I could open that and they'll essentially, that will pop up on their screen. I can share my screen. That's probably the easiest one for you rather than sharing individual files. So if I click my screen, they will basically see my whole screen. It's going to be mad because I've got some software on the other side which is recording this, and it's just literally showing those multiple times. So I'm going to disable that because that's quite difficult to see, quite difficult to read. So let me jump back and disable that. There you go, stop sharing. So this is, you can share your screen. You can also go this thing on the right called Whiteboard. This is like an internal application to Microsoft. You can basically, I think it's just like you can draw with it and that. So if you want to demo some, you want to essentially put the equivalent of a whiteboard on the screen, you can use that. I mean, you can just use apps and windows like Paint or whatever you've got on your device, but it's quite useful. I mean, if you've got a graphics tablet, which is like a electronic board with a electronic pen you can write on, you could use that as well. But anyway, so you can share your screen that way. I'm just going to get rid of that though. We don't want to share our screen. You can also, there's more options, so I'll come to in a second. You've got raise your hand. So if you've got a class and you want them to say, right, if they want to ask a question, they can click that and then you can say, right, okay, John, you can ask a question. They can unmute and that's up to you. They got show conversation. So if I click that, that shows the conversation on the right. So if I type a question, so I'll say, sir, can blah, blah, blah. Then if I send that if I go to the other account, they will also see that conversation. So if I go to show conversation, you can see there's a little icon on that, and you see there's a question there, and it says who is sent by. So that's quite useful for basically, for kids. You can say, perhaps give them permission to ask questions along the way, and you can answer them through your audio. That's quite useful. If you go to show participants here, this is where you can see who's part of the meeting. You've got a list here. You've got suggestions because that person's also in the team that isn't there, so you can quickly ask to join. It'll send them a little notification. I've only got one person, but if you have multiple people, you've got this mute all option up here. So you can choose the mute all. You can also manage permissions here, by the way. So if you've got issues with kids and permissions, I'll jump up. You can go back to that screen here. So we'll close out though. You can, if I click on teacher.user, which is one of the people, I can now you don't want to make them presenter, but if they were already presenter, you can choose make an attendee, which basically means take away their privileges if someone happened to join that had those privileges. You can remove people, which I'm going to go through in a second. You can also pin them, which basically means keep them at the top. I mean, obviously, if you've got 30 people, but there's a couple of people you want to pin to the top for whatever reason, you can do that as well. Perhaps you want to be able to quickly remove them. Now, with removing, it's very annoying, and this is something apparently Microsoft are looking into. If you hit remove participant, so I'm going to hit that. So I'm going to remove teacher.user. It says leaving. If I go back to their screen, right, it says someone has removed you. However, they simply click rejoin and they're back in, which is quite frustrating because obviously if you've removed someone, you don't want them able to just simply join back in whenever they want, because I'm guessing you've removed them for a reason. So what you need to do if you want to remove someone is you quickly go into your teams. You need to basically, obviously, it's open up my normal teams. You can see the video conference is still there in the top left corner. You go to your manage team option like we learned in the basics video, and you literally select that person and press the X and get them out of the whole team. I know it seems like the nuclear option, but that's the only way at the moment of getting them out, and then they can't rejoin. And then when you go back in, remove them, then they won't be able to come back in because obviously they're not part of the organisation. They'll be asked to sit in a lobby or something if they try to do it. So that's the way you can do it. But that, unfortunately, that's the only way it can be done at the moment. But they are apparently working on that. Now, more actions. You will have an option which is in here because I haven't got a video camera saying change your background. So this is a way you can add silly backgrounds like, I know, San Francisco Bridge or this space backgrounds and so on, but you can also blur your background, which is quite useful. So if you want to maintain your privacy a little bit, so you'll still see you, but it will get rid of the background. You can show your device settings, which basically just brings up your mic and your speakers. So if you've got any sound issues, perhaps look in there to see if you've got the right mic. For example, I've got multiple audio devices on this computer, so you can see I might just have the wrong one selected, which is why it's not working. Same with speakers. So make sure you check them if you're having any problems. You've also got show meeting notes if someone's writing notes, full screen or self-explanatory. Live captions is quite useful for our hearing impaired pupils, because if you click here, now if I talk a little bit slower, it should hopefully bring up what I'm saying in the bottom corner here. I'm still talking, hoping it will come up any second now. I've tested this and it did seem to work very well. Oh, it would help if I actually turn my mic on. Yeah, I'll test it now, but I think the sound's a bit mad, so you can see it's popping up there. But I'll stop that now. Anyway, so that's an option as well you can use, but obviously it's not great with accents and if you talk very fast, but it's just an option. You got keypad, don't worry about that, that's just for another Microsoft program. Start recording. This is quite useful. I would advise you probably record lessons because for two reasons. If there's a mishap, as in or there's an incident, you obviously have evidence of that. But also if there's if pupil or someone misses the meeting or the lesson, then it will save on the timeline, so they can basically watch it back later on. Obviously got end meeting and turn off incoming video, so if you don't want to see other people's video, you can turn off. So I'm going to hit start recording so we can play around with that in a second. Now it says you're recording. Now if I go back to the test account, it does actually tell them as well, so everyone will know they are being recorded at the start. Now what I would do with all this is I would make sure you set up some ground rules. For example, how you're going to communicate, how they're going to ask questions, whether it's in the chat or whether it's the raise hand, that's up to you. I would probably advise pupils don't show any video and generally keep their mics muted all the time. Obviously it's going to depend on relationships to the class. If there are issues, if you record the lesson, you'll have evidence, and also you deal with it in the same way if you had an issue during a normal lesson. So that's how you can that's some of the ways you can use this. Anyway, I think that's everything. I hope you sorry before I go, I got a bit premature there. So if I stop recording that video, it's going to say meeting's been recorded, you show and stop. Yeah, I'm going to stop recording. Now what will happen now if I end the meeting, so I'm going to just hang up there. Let me hang up my the pupil first. So let's press hang up. And let's go back to my team, and I'm going to hang up there. What will happen is, if you look here, it says meeting recording has stopped, saving. Now, this will take a bit of time. Depending on how big your video is, it can take a bit of time to process. But if you just leave that, you're not going to keep the Teams open. You can close it. It will do in the background, on the servers of Microsoft. When it's done, which I will show you in a second, I'll obviously just wait and start recording again. If you leave that go, it'll have a video of the lesson, which I'll go through in a second. And by the powers of video editing, it is done. So as you can see, this has been processed now. Obviously only 50 seconds, we didn't record for very long, and all we do if we want to watch this, if I've missed the meeting, I click this, it'll open up in a window and it'll start playing. And if you notice as well, it's also done things side by side, so you can see who was in there, and if you shared your screen, it would show that as well, and obviously play the sound. So that's basically what happens. So it's quite useful for people that did miss the meeting, and like I said, for things like evidence. So you can open in stream, you can share it, and yeah, do whatever. Anyway, so get link is quite useful, I suppose, as well, if you want to share it with someone externally, like ahead of you, if there was a problem. Now my final thoughts on this now before I go is, one thing some of you may wonder is, if you mute people, they can unmute themselves, and they can do certain things that you've essentially set up not to do, like unmute themselves. Now, if the thing is, if you were going to allow pupils to not speak and not type messages, I guess there'd be no point on doing this. You know, you would just simply, there's no point in doing this. You may as well just do a video recording and post the video on Teams instead. The whole point of this is you want people engaging. So obviously, you know, you'll know your class is best. You know, I've used this with my year 12s because part of their first module, their course, they have to discuss. So this has been perfect for that. But, you know, it'll be better for some classes and not for some. But I just want you to be aware of that. You know, they can unmute themselves, and you know, if you've got some silly people. But I guess, like I said, you deal with it in the same way you deal with normal incidents. So I just wanted to let you know that before you went ahead. So I hope you found this useful.